Good morning, everyone. In today's class, we will try to understand comic relief, tragic relief, and conceit together. Okay, let us start with comic relief and tragic relief first. According to a glossary of literary terms by M.H. Abrams and Geoffrey Goldharfer, comic relief is the introduction of comic characters, speeches, or scenes in a serious or tragic work, especially in drama. That is, if the drama is a tragedy, then it is very important to balance the situation. Otherwise, excessive tragedy will hamper the audience's mind. They will create a kind of tense situation in the mind of the audience. This is why, to balance the situation, the author or the dramatist or the playwright introduce some kind of comic characters, some kind of comic speeches, some kind of comic scenes to overcome that particular excessive tragedy. Okay, the purpose of comic relief is to reduce tension. The third point I'm telling you, reduce tension and adding a kind of variety. Okay, it gives a kind of variety to the drama or the play. I think you have understood what comic relief is. Now coming to the tragic relief. It is completely opposite to comic relief. Comic relief is used in the tragedies and tragic relief is used in the comedies. That is, while we feel, the author feel that it will be a kind of excessive kind of comedy, then to balance that particular comedy, the belly laugh comedy, he introduces some kind of elements, some tragic elements to balance the situation. Otherwise, it is harmful for the audience. The tragedy is also harmful and comedy is also harmful. This is why the harmony between both comedy and tragedy should be there. Okay, so I think you have understood what comic relief and what tragic relief is. Comic relief is introduction of comedy in tragedy, and tragic relief is introduction of tragedy in comedy. Okay, I think you have understood it very well. Now see, there's such kind of elements, that is comic relief and tragic relief, were almost universal in Elizabethan tragedy. Elizabethan tragedy means the tragedies that were written during the time of Queen Elizabeth, that is the Shakespearean age. During that particular time, this kind of comic and tragic relief were seen abundantly. Now coming to some examples of comic relief. I'm not giving you the examples of tragic relief. You just go through that. Examples of comic relief. Number one, the scene of the drunken porter after the murder of the King Macbeth. Act 2, Scene 3. Macbeth was killed. The situation was very tensed. The situation was extremely tragic. Okay, in such situation, thinking of uh, the audience, the writer or the playwright, that is Shakespeare, introduces the character of drunken porter. He is a comic character. Okay, to minimize, to reduce the pain of the audience. I think you have understood what I am going to tell you. Okay, number two, the roles of Mercutio, an old nurse in Romeo and Juliet. This is another tragedy, Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. Here also we can see two comic characters. This is tragedy, an introduction of comic characters, Mercutio and old nurse. Okay, by introducing these two comic characters, he is trying to balance the situation, balance the whole situation of the play. Okay, I think you have understood what comic relief and what tragic relief are, and what are the differences between tragic and comic relief. Okay, now coming to the conceit. Conceit originally means a concept or image. Originally, it means a concept or image. This is a figure of speech, establishes a striking parallel between two very dissimilar things or situation. Conceit is a kind of comparison, kind of making parallelism between two very dissimilar things, okay, or situation. Here I have written within brackets that within parentheses that quite similar to metaphor and simile, but more complex. Metaphor and simile, I think you have understood what metaphor and simile. I told you in previous classes as well. Metaphor and simile are also the comparison between two dissimilar things, but they uses a very simple kind of a comparison. But here in conceit, we can see some complexities are there. Okay, I think you have understood something about what conceit is. Now coming to the types of conceit. Mainly we have two types. One is Petrarchan conceit, originally from Italian poetry of Petrarch, and number two is metaphysical conceit, used by the metaphysical poets of the 17th century, mainly by John Donne, okay, and many other metaphysical poets. Now see, conceit is a uh, complex kind of parallelism between two very dissimilar things or situation. Now, when we go through the examples and analysis, then we will come to understand that particular things very well. The poets of 16th century and the 17th century adapted this form, this term from the Italian concetto. That is, conceit is originated from the word concetto. This term is from Italian language. Okay, so this is adapted from the Italian language. This is also important for your understanding and for your uh, information. Okay, now see, number one, the Petrarchan conceit. What Petrarchan conceit is and who used the Petrarchan conceit. This term has come from the Italian poet Petrarch. We have already come to know. This Petrarchan conceit is used in the love poems basically. What kind of love poems we will come to know. Imitated by the Elizabethan sonneteers. The sonneteers means sonnet, you know, I think the 14-line poems are known as sonnets. Okay, we will discuss this particular term as well while we will discuss S. Okay, starting with the S. Now see, the figure consists of detailed, ingenious, and often exaggerated comparisons applied to the disdainful mistress. That is, while writing a love poem, a disdainful mistress is shown. Okay, that is, a courtly love could be noticed in such kind of poems, and to make a detail, to give a details of that particular lady or the mistress, the writer or the author or the poet uses a kind of detailed, ingenious, and exaggerated comparison. Okay, and this comparison is known as Petrarchan conceit. That is, it is a conceit, and this is similar to the conceits that are used by Petrarch. This is why this is known as Petrarchan conceit. For example, in Sir Thomas Waite's poem, that is sonnet, My galley surge with forgetfulness, translated from Petrarch, he compares the lover's state in details to a ship laboring in storm. That is a kind of detailed comparison, a kind of exaggerated comparison. Here, see, in this poem, My galley charged with forgetfulness, the poet compares the lover state, that is, the lover is struggling to get the love of, to get the affection of the beloved, affection of the girl or the mistress. And this kind of struggle is compared to the ship laboring in storm. That is, the ship is trying to come out from the storm, and this is a kind of labor, and the labor of the lover, both are compared to each other. Okay, I think you have understood. It is a kind of detailed uh, and exaggerated kind of parallelism or uh, comparison. Okay, now coming to the metaphysical conceit. Metaphysical conceit is associated with the metaphysical poets of the 17th century, including John Donne. Basically, I will give you the example of John Donne because his poems are more understandable, and we can get metaphysical conceit in a very prominent way, more intricate and intellectual device than Petrarchan conceit. Petrarchan conceit is quite simple, but metaphysical conceit is a kind of intellectual device. It is quite complex again. It usually sets up an analogy between one entity's spiritual qualities and an object in the physical world, and sometimes controls the whole structure of the poem. That is, metaphysical means beyond the physical world. In this particular kind of metaphysical conceit, the poet tries to compare two things. One is metaphysical, that is beyond the physical world, we can tell it spiritual, and the other is the uh, the world, sorry, the object in the physical world. So this kind of conceit or parallelism is known as metaphysical conceit. For example, we can take a valediction forbidding mourning. This is a poem by John Donne. Here he compares the two lover souls to a compass, never meeting but dependent on each other. To a compass. I think you know what compass is. Okay, the two souls of two lovers and beloveds uh, are compared to the sides of a compass. They do not meet each other, but they are dependent on each other. Okay, this is a kind of long distance relationship. Okay, one cannot exist without the other. This is a kind of beyond our logic. Number two, in the poem The Flea, John Donne has shown the flea as a link between the lover and beloved in an exceptional way. That is, the flea uh, bites the beloved. Okay, it sucks the blood of beloved, and it comes to the lover. It again bites the lover, and then the blood of both lover and beloved are getting united in the belly of that particular flea. This is how both the lover and beloved are united. Both they are not meeting physically, both they are not getting touch with each other, but in the belly of that particular flea, they are getting united. Such kind of parallelism or the comparison or kind of logic is being used in metaphysical conceit. I think you have understood what metaphysical conceit is, and what Petrarchan conceit is. I think we must stop the class here today. We will try to understand it better. If you do not understand, just tell me that we did not understand. Then I shall repeat it again. Okay, thank you for today.